Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Life as a Chad YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be, and of course, however you may be listening. This is a little past due. I wanted to react and respond to this last week. You heard, but I was little time pressed, so I was unable to do so. Irregardless, we're here now. We in here, and I'm going to be responding to it. We're actually going to be responding to a video from The Better Bachelor. And I've done a few videos surrounding this topic. Definitely, I believe, two directly related to Steven Crowder and his divorce situation as I expound upon it, especially as an Orthodox Christian. And as I have said in those videos, and I haven't really changed much since, it's very difficult for me because, like many in the red pill space, which I, by the way, would not consider myself a part of, as I think at the end of the day, if something does not have real world actions that are being taken from it, vis-a-vis an organization or political power, whatever the case may be, then it's virtually irrelevant. But it is good for what it's worth, which is some knowledge. For me personally, what I take the red pill to mean is just the search for truth. Now, the problem with that is that everybody's truth can be different, and everybody does not have the same ability to access, or the same access to information before them. But nonetheless, on one hand, I'm an Orthodox Christian, and like many in the red pill space, and the Christian space, I believe that the bedrock of a functional society, a thriving society, a good society, is the nuclear family. I think the nuclear family is amazing and offers tremendous benefits. I think it is impactful, purposeful, meaningful, and quite frankly, what God ordains. However, I, like many others as well, see the current state of things, namely the laws and the application of the laws that coincide with that, and the current state of modern women, vis-a-vis being masculine, aggressive, incapable of ever being truly happy, wanting the world, wanting everything. And so those two things are very conflicting for me. And this is something, admittingly, that I myself am working through, because I can never agree. I think the one step I have taken forward is that at the end of the day, I think it comes down to this. Marriage, especially in today's day and age, is a risk for a variety of reasons, namely the traditional society that enforces said contract no longer really exists. And so you're not really able to hold both parties accountable as you should. But it's a risk. Probably more so now than it ever has been. No matter how you slice it, because I hear Christians, fellow Christian friends, and YouTubers, and like I said, people I know in real life who would say, well, it's what God wants. And on top of that, you should just trust God. I can get down with that, and I for the most part I do trust in God, but I also don't think that overall that is a sufficient answer to the real world problem that many men are facing. And a lot of men who are not religiously inclined will hear that and say, wow, you know, the only reason why I'm able to stomach it is because I've been a Christian my entire life. But I think it comes down to it is a risk. Are you okay with the risk or are you not okay with the risk? Is everything that you would get from marriage, namely the good things, is that far out? Does that far outweigh the possible risks that come along with it? And if to you the answer is yes, then I think you will likely be um, you will be inclined to get marriage. If the answer is no, I think you probably won't. And to tell you the truth, I think many of the people who are on the other side of things, that they are inclined towards taking that risk. And really, I'm talking about men because it's not really a risk for women, it's a risk for men. I think a lot of them are the very few who come from an intact family and still live in that fairy tale unicorn. I'm going to find myself a unicorn mindset. But where we're getting is most people increasingly do not come from intact homes and therefore don't see the world or marriage through those rose color lenses. And I count myself as one of those. Now, one argument that I have heard that I do find this is probably the best argument I've heard. And it's not necessarily an argument per se for why one should get married as much as, well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. And I've heard this from Andrew Wilson. I've heard this from other fellow Christians, Jay Dyer, people I know day to day, which is that number one, men run society. And given the fact that men run society, if tomorrow, and this is where the red pill gets it wrong, because the red pill and the manosphere primarily sees women as the perpetrators against men. And while that is true on a certain level, ultimately men have the domain of physicality. They are incumbent upon strength within a society. And so the argument goes, and you can hear this from Andrew Wilson, if even like 10% of men woke up tomorrow and decided that feminism would no longer exist and felt strongly about it, it would no longer exist. Okay. And I do believe that to be true. Now let's take it one step further, going back to the previous argument that I was discussing. Given the strength and power and authority that men really do exude and inhabit, if you want society, and what the argument I just made, if you want society to exist a certain way, then you must be the change that you wish to see in the world. Meaning that if you are tired of these bimbo women and classless masculine women, then you must be a strong enough man and enter into the agreement en route to creating feminine good women again. That's probably the only argument that I have heard that I think is stomachable, and I definitely can understand. And so take that for what it is. But nonetheless, we're going to check out this video from Better Bachelor. And as I said, this is about Steven Crowder. And it's just so crazy. Like, think about this, guys. Steven Crowder, on one end of the spectrum, a conservative, semi-masculine, certainly more masculine than somebody like Destiny, is getting divorced and is having his kids taken away from him, or likely will have his kids taken away from him, and is having to pay $300,000 to his ex-wife to basically fund her bank to pay for the lawyers that will be fighting against him. So he's paying for the lawyers that are fighting for him, and he's paying for the lawyers that are fighting against him. Now, that is somewhat understandable, especially if your wife was more of a stay-at-home wife, so on and so on. So on one side of the spectrum, you have a Steven Crowder, the Christian, traditional, tradcon Christian man. And on the other, you have Destiny. What do they both have in common? Women. What do those two things both have in common? Divorce. So it's like, it's very ironic because the Christian side of things, they'll say, well, if you're just a strong enough, masculine enough man, the marriage will be successful and it'll take care of itself. And while I do agree with that to a certain degree, it does take two to tango. And women, after all, they are equal in today's society. They should be given at least a little bit of accountability when it comes to this. And on the other, you have the beta male, blue-haired femboys who kowtow to every request that a woman makes, insofar as letting another man take her in front of you. And not even that doesn't work. So when you are super masculine, and I'm not saying Steven Crowder's super masculine, but so it does fall short there. But you take the masculine and it doesn't work. She ends up leaving. You take the super effeminate femboy in Destiny, she ends up leaving. What do they both have in common? They get unhappy. They end up thinking that something else will be bigger and better and bring them more happiness, and it inevitably does not. And this is the world we're living in, guys. I mean, it is a tremendous risk. And I think as of now, and I can't advocate for this as I am an Orthodox Christian, but for myself personally, I think I am leaning towards it is too big a risk. And while I want kids and would love to have a family down the line, ultimately, I think it's too big of a risk. And then I tend to be a lone wolf, kind of independent man. And there's just certain elements to being married that just wouldn't jive with that, So, and I know what those entail because I've seen examples, and I just don't know that I could do it. But I think as of this moment in time, I'm leaning towards it's too much of a risk. To those who think otherwise, more power to you. But, all right, let's check this video from Beta Bachelor. See what he has to say.
Let's go both directions with this. Steven Crowder is a horrible monster. He turned into a nightmare after they married, and she deserves every penny of this. Okay, maybe that's fair. Should she be getting other parties involved to ruin and trash his name? Should to put a peer pressure campaign against, because that's kind of what the contention is, to put a peer pressure campaign against him so he'll fold, so she'll just leave him alone? Because that's kind of what it appears to be so far. Maybe he was a monster. Okay, she gets away. She gets divorce proceedings.
He was a monster!
He loses the battle.
Which they are definitely trying to make Steven Crowder appear, or she is at least, in the footage that she has been dropping. And think about that. Not only is she divorcing him, but she is tearing down this man's reputation, which is equally worse. I mean, that's pretty severe. She is divorcing him asking for money and then simultaneously impacting the amount of money that she will likely be given vis-a-vis him, vis-a-vis alimony, by assassinating his character and his integrity. But I'm not surprised by that. Women are not long-term thinkers. They are very in the moment, short-term thinkers.
And has to pay money out to her. That's not where this is going, though. This is going to where she's publicizing things and going to the media, talking to other people about it's public now. This is no longer a private
Yeah, very much public. I mean, as public as it gets.
matter. And when you're a public persona, you lose your shirt. Now, maybe you say that's justified, but the whole point is it's not just between him and her anymore. It's between everybody. Is she right to do that? Let's say he's right and she's the monster. It's still, now she's coming after him. Now he still has to go through more courts and more court proceedings. And now he has to put out, world tour apology statements, and his friends need to come out and verify. Is any of this worth it?
Wow.
Is any of it worth it?
And I think he's lost employees, as there have been employees and former employees who have come out in support. I mean, if this is just pure carnage, if I think of the imagery of the metaphor that is attached to what this situation is, I think of a luscious field with trees, and then the after effect of what I would imagine a nuclear bomb looks like after it's done. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think of end times. That's what I think of. And the bottom line is, this is just a tremendous risk. And, Steven started dating her because Steven was a day one homie for me. I don't watch him hardly at all anymore. I haven't watched him very like at all probably for the past 3 or 4 years. As I always tell you guys, when you're a conservative, there's a progression of things. And, Steven Crowder is like at the beginning point, and then you progress past Steven Crowder. And once you've graduated from him, you never revisit because it's kind of vanilla, surface level, toe in the line conservatism. But he married her at the beginning of his career. So he was a stand-up comedian, and then he kind of transitioned and well, he was an actor. He was in one of the bigger Christian films in the 2000s. Trying to remember, it came out when I was still in grade school. So probably, if I had to guess, like it was between like 2008, 2015 is probably when that movie was. And it was with the other main character who had like long blonde hair and was the cool Christian. So he did that. And then he was a stand-up comic, and his whole bit was, I'm the edgy conservative comedian who's willing to say the things that none of the NPC regular stand-up comedians are. I'm different, which, in fairness, he was. And then he transitioned into being a woman. No, I'm kidding. He transitioned into his show, his podcast, and he had not G. Garrett. I mean, not G. Jared. And then, so he did that, and it grew and grew and grew. Now, Steven was very lucky because this was right at the beginning of YouTube political commentary taking off, especially on the Con Inc. side of things, the conservative side of things. If you guys remember, it was him, Gavin McInnes, Lauren Southern, Lauren Chen, and Milo Yiannopoulos. Those were the 5 main characters during that time, but Steven Crowder and Gavin were 2 of the first ones on the YouTube side of things. And then you also had like Stefan Molyneux and people like that. Man, times fly, guys. If you want an even better, I guess, explanation of the timetable, it was beginning around 2014, right before the election, the 2016 election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And it wasn't just that it was a somewhat new thing. It was also because of Donald Trump being who Donald Trump was, and that political cycle being what it was. I mean, it was a historical political cycle that really put these individuals forth. Ben Shapiro, I just don't consider Ben Shapiro, honestly, to be really that truly popular himself. His institutions, yes, but himself, not really. You had Mark Dice. Hell, you even had Alex Jones before he got banned. I think he got banned either right before or right after the 26 election off of YouTube. So hopefully that kind of explains the timeline. And so Steven Crowder, she was with him through it all. I remember one of the big things was him talking about his marriage and him being married and how that was a conservative thing to do, a traditional thing to do. And in his debates on campus, where it would be what's the name of the segment? Tell me why I'm wrong, or whatever his like really popular segment was when he would go on college campuses. You would see his wife there with the setup. She would commonly help with all of that. That's it. It was changed my mind segments. That's what it was. So this is the reason why this is especially notorious, is because of how vocal Steven was about his marital situation. And it like, guys, if you're a big Steven Crowder fan or was a big Steven Crowder fan, you know as well as I that everything did seem to be going really, really well. Like really, really well. This dude talked about it all the time. So that it's not just that he's a conservative man and that it's a lot of money. It's many, many things. All right, let's get back to Better Bachelor. Let's see what he has to say.
Maybe for his kids, but he doesn't get to keep the kids, maybe. Or maybe he gets limited supervision. See, this is the problem when women say, oh, he's a monster. Everybody says, okay, he's a monster.
Huh.
Take the kids away. Or that he only can have supervised visits. Is any of it worth it? That's my overall question. Is it worth it? Here, we joke about divorce rates and what they are, but if there was 5 M&Ms out of 100 and you eat them and it's going to ruin your life and end up putting you in an early grave because of stress and everything else, would you do it? But the rest of the M&Ms, you'll be satisfied. Things will be okay. We know the statistics are a lot worse when you look at divorce statistics and the amount of women that file and then the women that say you were a bad man.
Okay, so this is a good point to stop. So as I said, you guys know I'm a Eastern Orthodox, and here's the thing that I struggle with within my own Christianity is that even within the church, I am the odd man out. In my experience, while I have a lot of similarities to the people who go to the same church as me and have the same faith as me, when it comes to marriage, a lot of them very much do have the rose-colored lenses. And I already know the argument that they would make is, well, it's different because it's a Christian girl. And so it doesn't even apply. What the stats are only for secularism. It's only for secularists. This doesn't count for us. And the thing is, that's bullshit. It does still count for you because those same Christian women still do live in a Western society. And while the numbers are better for marriage for Christian women and Christian men, they are, the divorce rate is still alarmingly high. Now, again, I already know the second argument. The counter argument to that would be, well, that's Protestant Christians that it's really, really high. Okay, I can get behind that. And that's fair as well. Okay. But no matter how you slice it, it is still a tremendous risk. It just is. And you're talking about a guy here who was a Christian man, was a top 1% earner, was physically in shape, wasn't an ugly guy. Okay, I wouldn't say he's like model good looking or anything like that, but he's not ugly, he's in shape. He looks like a perfectly fine man. And it's still not good enough. It's still not good enough. And no matter how you slice it, it's a tremendous it's a tremendous risk. And that's why I said at the onset that what this comes down to is it's a risk. Okay, given that it's a risk, are you okay with the risk? Are the positives greater than the possible negatives and downside of you potentially losing your life and having to pay back money and having all that stress and time and energy, heartache and headache? Does it outweigh all of that? And if not, if the risk is not worth it, then you don't get married. I mean, I think fundamentally that is what it comes down to. And the thing is that my fellow Christians will say, well, you're a Christian. It doesn't matter. You have to get married. No, that's not true. You don't have to get married as a Christian. It definitely says you do not have to, so, but I also don't think that that's a strong possibility, as most men, especially if they become a fairly successful man, have the discipline to totally abstain from sex completely. So, there's that, which is why you see so many Christian men getting into marriage so quickly, is because, they want that good. They do. And I get it. I get it. Believe me, I get it. You heard? So,
And to get custody of kids and extra money payout, and the number of women that maybe you don't get divorced, but she eats too much, or she nags you all the time, or something goes wrong. You're talking about 40 or 50% of those M&Ms being horrible. Well, Steven Crowder got a mouthful of bad M&Ms, and maybe he deserves it, and maybe he doesn't. But either way, if Steven hadn't gotten married, if Steven didn't have kids and everything else with this woman particularly, he wouldn't be in this predicament. Now, maybe he'd have former employees telling him he's a bad man. I don't know, but it's a whole big difference. From SCNR, exclusive, Louder with Crowder files lawsuit accusing Jared Monroe, who is one of his former employees, and Hillary Crowder, his ex-wife, of extortion scheme.
Wow.
Jared said, I just don't want Steven Crowder anywhere near those kids. Jared Mettello says in a text message to Hillary Crowder. Maybe that means Steven's a horrible man. Of course, they put a picture up here of Steven looking very serious and kind of angry. How's this ex-employee now getting involved with his wife on this stuff? See, to me.
So I remember. So again, if you guys remember, not Jared was one of the pivotal pieces to the success of Louder with Crowder. And was a day one homie. Day one writer was Steven Crowder. He was the producer of the show. And then abruptly he quit. He quit the show. Especially, and it was stunning because the show was becoming the most popular it had ever been. So this, to me, given that I know that information, is not necessarily surprising, because anybody with a logical brain would say that something's off there. The person who helped bring this show to what it was, the success that they knew it could be, when it finally reaches the peak, he decides to part ways and bounce. So it's not necessarily surprising. If you guys want to look into the lore of not Jared leaving the show, there's plenty of videos on that.
It sounds a little like simpy behavior. Like this guy's like, yeah, I'm totally with you, Hillary. Let's get him. Metellus raised more than $72,000 in donations in just over a day after accusing his former employee of legal abuse. Despite the seemingly sudden conflict between him and Crowder, Metellus parted ways with Louder with Crowder all the way back in August of 2018. At that time, he signed an agreement with the company that included a non-disparagement clause. Now, if it says that, if he signed it, a disparagement clause, that means you can't disparage him. That's what it means. Now, if you didn't want to sign that clause, then you could disparage him. That's like an NDA, a non-disclosure. If you sign this NDA, we'll give you $200,000, but you can't talk about the case. You either A, take the money and shut up, or B, say, I'm not signing that, and then you talk about the issue. You know, the attorney that Hillary Crowder has hired is the same attorney that there was a baseball player, and I did a video on this. I don't have his name. There was a baseball player, young guy, who hooks up with this chick, and then she says he did all these awful things like beat her and hurt her. Come to find out, all of that was.
It's got to be Trevor Bauer. That's who it is, Trevor Bauer. And I've done a video on him too. And I've seen the evidence that he has to defend himself, and it's quite strong. I don't think he did what those women claimed him to do. But again, if you guys want to check that out, you can check the video I did on that, or you guys can check there's plenty of other videos that have been done on the Trevor Bauer situation.
Faults, but in the meantime, it ruined the baseball player's name. He got
did.
fired from the MLB.
Think about that, guys. That guy had been working his entire life. His entire life to make it to the pros, which less than 1% of the population is able to do. And it all came to a screeching halt because of a few dirty, rotten bimbos. That's why, fellas, you got to choose wisely. You really do. It is the single most, or like one of the top 5, top 3 decisions you will make in your entire life. And especially if you're somebody who is not religious and is okay engaging in premarital sex, it definitely increases the likelihood of that happening to you, because you're not, in your mind, you're not as adamant about being super selective, because all you want to get is your nut, much like the Christian man. Oh man, I'm done. But you still should be super selective, even if you are that man that has sex with multiple women outside of marriage. It's a very important decision. It is. So, you know, because I'm telling you guys right now, the way things are set up in the law, if anything were to happen, it's a 95% chance that your whole life will be done. your uh your life will be ruined. Just bar none. The respect people have for you, it will all come crumbling down. Your reputation will be ruined. Your character will be ruined. Financially, you'll likely be ruined. I mean, it's the consequences are dire, guys. And you know, if you don't have the wherewithal to deal with that sort of shit, then don't take the smoke. Okay. And yes, that is part of the problem too, is too many men out here think that they could take the smoke, but they ain't ready for the smoke. You know what I'm saying? You heard? So, and they shouldn't even be messing with that in the first place. They is not ready. They are not ready for the smoke. Not everybody can be an alpha man out here, okay?
He had to go through court, and in the end of it, he didn't sign an NDA, and he came out and spilled the beans on all of it, on what this woman did, and the texts and the extortion she tried to take him through. Well, if you sign the non-disparagement clause, you're done. You said, I agree, I'm not going to say anything about this. And then he turns around and comes out and says it. And obviously when he says this former employer did X, Y, Z, everybody knows who he's talking about. You're not safe from that just because you don't mention the name. Despite the seemingly sudden conflict between him and Crowder, Metelo parted ways with LWC way back 2018. LWC's lawsuit, which only names Metelo, claims the scheme began in 2022 when Stevens' ex-wife, Hillary Crowder, plotted to extort him for more money than Texas law would allow in their pending divorce proceedings, according to court filings obtained by SCNR.
Now, one thing I initially thought when I first heard this video is, I wonder if they had a side relationship that we don't know about, because this is some beta male behavior. This is some like cuckery, kind of like low-hanging fruit on the side, snaky skis ball behavior from this NGJ. Not G Jared, but I don't have any evidence of that. But that is the first thought that came to mind, because it's like, dude, why would you even care that much if you don't even work at Loud? It's been several years. If you don't even work at Louder with Crowder anymore, move the fuck on, dude. Be a man. Move on. Go to your next career. Like me, if I left my place of business, I'm leaving it in the rear view. The only time that's being revisited is as a reference, and that's it. Not for coffee, not unless it is worth maintaining that professional relationship. That's it. The type of person that maintains past relationships like that are usually women. So he very much is acting in a womanly manner. Now, who knows? Maybe Crowder is this monster that they are trying to say he is, you know? And so in that regard, maybe he is in his own way being an alpha. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, we don't know truly what is going on behind the scenes, and we won't know until all of it has been released in its entirety.
Steven has been ordered to pay Hillary $25,000 a month in support for the last 2 years. However, in a recent social media post seeking employment, she claimed she could no longer afford to be the stay-at-home mother. LWC lawyers allege in 2022, Hillary messaged relatives and a lawyer saying it was time this divorce went public, and boasted she held Steven's reputation in her hands. Now that's what Steven's lawyers are alleging. Well, I'm sure there's going to be documents based on that. The legal team claimed Hillary and her family were optimistic that making things public would create social pressure and optics that would cause Steven to force Mr. Crowder to settle in the divorce proceedings. Defendants then implemented their full-throated effect to engage in the negative media campaign to damage Louder with Crowder. In an email sent to family members on September 11, 2022, Hillary's father, Tim Corzine, had detailed the type of team he wants to build to help his daughter in the divorce, specifically to destabilize his former son in law and father of his grandchildren. They understand right-wing media, Corzine wrote of the ideal team member. They're familiar with who Stephen is and that world and the things that would.
All right, guys, that's essentially it. I'm going to cut it off there. My final parting thought is, if you must marry and you cannot wait any longer and you must get married, you must do so wisely. You must do your due diligence. You must do your homework and make sure, damn sure, that you are picking a woman that is worthy of you as a man and will be that woman that is a ride or die with you day one, through thick and thin, through sicker health, rich or poor, all of that. We used to have that sort of society. We used to have the church super involved as the backdrop to enforce a nuclear family culture, but we don't any longer. So the best that you can do is do the homework yourself as a man and whatever means you have at your disposal. And that's really it. I mean, I'm not saying I'm fully against marriage and would never advocate that as an Orthodox Christian, but I will say you are well within your right to do your due diligence. The problem is that too many men out here think, oh my God, I'm just so lucky that this girl gave me 2 seconds of the day. And, I'm just so lucky and like feel guilty for wanting to know any bit of information about her past, what she believes in, what her morals are, what she thinks, her relationship with her father, what she thinks of marriage, what she thinks politically. I mean, all of these things are relevant, more or less. What she thinks about kids, what she thinks about mothers, what she thinks about men. Let me tell you guys something. If you, at the end of the day, guys, the man really is the prize, and women know it. So you are, and even if you didn't believe that, you are still well within your right to do the due diligence necessary to ensure that you select a good mother to your future children and a good wife to you as a man. You are well within your right to do so, because let me tell you something, you best believe that she's doing it to you. You heard? So it just is what it is. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. And last but not least, DVAP, don't be a pussy willow. Facts are feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Love you, kings. See you guys next time. Christ is king. Peace.